Michael Shrews has pleaded not guilty to this indictment, charging him with one offence of sexual assault. You have now all been deemed to have been sworn in on your religious books or have otherwise affirmed to do this, namely that you will all faithfully try the defendant upon the evidence and will return a true verdict according to this evidential exercise. You may now sit.
Thank you, members of the jury. You're free to make any notes that you want if you wish to. Yes, that brings us to the prosecution opening. Major Brogan.
Grateful, Your Honour. Very simply, this is a case where a 40-year-old regimental sergeant major, the defendant, sexually assaulted one of his female private soldiers in his bedroom. The complainant, Private Kerry Smith, who was only 19 years old at the time of the assault, was socialising in a pub in January of this year.
Did he say anything?
He said, "Go on if you want to."
Then what happened?
I kind of said that I didn't really, it wasn't really what I wanted, but he was, again, I didn't want to offend, he was somebody of a higher rank, and he moved his hand.
Did you then leave?
I didn't leave. Once his hand had moved further down my body to a place that I was uncomfortable, I ran into his ensuite, as I was very uncomfortable.
What did you do once in the bathroom?
I called my friend Emma, and I asked her to come and help me.
You had quite a lot to drink that night, didn't you?
I had what I would consider a normal amount of drink.
So, a normal amount of drink. You had 8 bottles of beer, shots of Sambuca and Jägermeister, and that was before Mike Smooth even came over.
Yes.
You wouldn't have driven a car in that condition, would you?
No.
My client approached your group with a tray of drinks for everyone, didn't he?
Yes.
And he shared those drinks out?
Yes.
So you had another drink?
Yes.
You sat on the bed with him and watched a movie, and you drank a beer each.
I sat on the sofa originally,
But you then went to join him on the bed.
as I was asked.
And what did she say on the phone?
She said that she has kissed Mr. Schmooze and that he has tried to finger her.
Okay, and what was her emotional state during this phone call?
She was emotionally unstable.
Sorry, Miss Wallace, was Miss Smith crying? Was she upset?
No, she wasn't crying. She was a bit shaky.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Wallace. No further questions from her.
See, she said that she was in the sergeant's mess and she had kissed the RSM, correct?
Correct.
You initially thought this was funny.
I did.
She then said that he had fingered her, yes?
Yes.
From this, you assumed that he had, forgive me for asking, put his finger inside her vagina.
I would, yes.
So then you went to find Kerry. When you went to find Kerry, you observed that she was still quite drunk, yes?
Your Honour, it just leaves now for the Crown to read the prepared statement given by the defendant in interview after caution, and then a summary of that interview.
Thank you.
I have been told by Staff Sergeant Bob McRae, Royal Military Police, that I am accused of indecently assaulting Private Kerry Smith on the night of the 5th to the 6th of January 2014. I deny this allegation. I drank a lot of alcohol in the cock and do not have a crystal clear recollection of the night. I admit that she came back to my accommodation and I know this is against the rules. I also admit that we drank a beer each in my room and that having alcohol in the accommodation is also against the rules. We watched a movie and kissed and cuddled in the double bed in my room. She was cold and had got under the covers. And that was signed on the 31st of January 2014.
Where did you go?
After a while I went to the bathroom.
Would she have been able to leave the room whilst you were in the bathroom if she wanted to?
Yes.
When you came out of the bathroom, what were you wearing?
My t-shirt and some boxer shorts, white t-shirts.
And again, she gave any response to this?
No, she did not.
Did you get into the bed?
Yes, I did. I went to the left side of the bed, got in, and there was no reaction. There was no supply.
And discipline is one of the fundamental principles of the British Army, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So, within your role, your job is to give orders and apply rules to soldiers such as Miss Carrie Smith.
Yes, this is true.
And you expect these orders to be followed, do you not?
Yes.
And if orders are disobeyed or rules are broken, you discipline the soldiers, don't you?
Yes.
The soldiers in your regiment revere you, don't they? Is that because you're a good regiment sergeant major?
Yes, this is.
But you're a bit of a hypocrite, aren't you, Mr. Schmooze? Because you don't always follow the rules that you so rigidly apply.
This is true. I blame this to the amount of alcohol I drank. It made me slightly reckless.
You agree that you were drunk and reckless?
Yes.
So you didn't follow the rule that you weren't allowed alcohol, did you?
No.
And you also didn't follow the rule that there are no junior ranks in the sergeant's mess? And you didn't follow the rule about females not sleeping in males' accommodation?
No.
So in essence, you don't mind breaking the rules when it suits you?
Since you put it that way, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some very short re-examination, Your Honour.
Yes. Go on.
Have you ever at any stage denied that you broke the rules on visitors in the mess and drink in the mess?
No.
Now, the prosecution team have very subtly insinuated that because you are in a disciplinary position and give orders, that you might have ordered her or ordered people to submit to sexual contact. Is that true at all?
No, she had every reason to leave if she wanted to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And do you know Carrie Smith?
I do.
How do you know Carrie Smith?
She works a few ranks below myself.
And do you know her on a more personal level than that?
Yes.
And how is it that you know her on a more personal level?
We had a brief relationship.
How long was this relationship?
A couple of weeks.
Did Mr. Schmooze know of this relationship?
He did, yes.
Now, the regimental sergeant major is the person who enforces those rules. He is revered by the soldiers in his unit, and they look at him as a godlike character. So there would have been an undercurrent feeling within the complainant to automatically say yes to everything he asks. It was quite simply an abuse of his position and taking advantage of him to ask the complainant to come back to his room, to ask her to sit on his bed, to ask her to get under those covers. So clearly she told him she did not consent. And he wants you to believe that she was consenting because she made a humming sound. Well, the Crown say, members of the jury, that is simply not a credible account from a man who does what he wants when he wants. This is exactly what it looks like. An older man, divorced, taking advantage of a young girl he believed would be willing to engage in sexual activity with him because of her relationship with another friend, and him taking advantage of the position of power he had.
What my learned friend has not told you is what the lawyers in here say is not evidence. It is merely argument or an attempt to persuade you of how to approach the evidence. What the judge says, by contrast, is legal direction to you, and you must follow that. Let's look at the evidence that would suggest either that she consented or that her lack of consent would not have been obvious to Mr. Schmooze. Carrie Smith started that flirtatious conversation. She was the one who was referring to Daniel Craig, an older, muscular man, as fit. Most 40-year-old men like this would not expect 19-year-old women to be romantically interested in them. It's not usual, is it? But in this particular case, Mike Schmooze knew that this one had had a previous relationship with his mid-30s friend, Bob Slick. So perhaps that would have changed the way he would have approached the situation.
I, of course, am the judge of the law and procedure. It's my task to ensure that Michael Schmooze gets a fair trial, that the witnesses can give their evidence as they wish to do, and then to direct you as to the law. You please take my directions of the law from me. You, on the other hand, are the judges of fact. You are the sole judges of fact. You and you alone decide what, if anything, has been proved in this case. An important matter of law is this: it's the prosecution who brought this case, it's therefore the prosecution who must prove it. As the lawyers say, the burden of proof rests upon the prosecution from beginning to the end. The defendant does not have to establish his innocence, although obviously he hopes to have done so. The fact of the matter is, it is for the prosecution to prove the case if they can. Secondly, a case is not proved in English law unless you, the jury, are made to feel sure that guilt has been established. That is to say that probably guilty would not do, on the balance of probabilities most certainly would not do at this stage. Being sure, and no less than being sure, is what is required.
And so it was it was obvious that it was going to be end in a sexual manner. So that part is obvious.
Gone out of the room and she stayed.
Yeah, and that's part.
Also, she had loads of opportunities to leave, and it wasn't just because he was at a higher rank.
And another part that Judge pointed out.
And she wasn't that drunk as well.
I think it's clear. Do you want to add anything else?
No, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the facts support, and one thing I did pick up is if your friend calls you to say she's been sexually assaulted, and you can tell by her voice because they're really good pals, you wouldn't laugh. Because you can tell by her voice, oh, you're really in trouble. So by the fact she was laughing, you can kind of assume that Kerry wasn't that emotional or distressed because your friend wouldn't laugh.
I feel it's like...
Foreman of the jury, please stand. Have you reached a verdict of which you all agree?
Yes.
Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty, unanimous vote.
There we go. Thank you very much indeed. Round of applause for our